once again, welcome to the show. I'm your host for tonight for the next 2 hours to 1 a.m. Central Standard Time. You're listening in on Radio Gombo Creole. And for those of you who are watching me from an app called Up.Live, hello to you guys out there. How y'all doing tonight? And out there in the audience, welcome to the show. Like I said before, I don't know if y'all heard me. I was having some technical difficulties, but I had myself muted on a soundboard, but I think I'm good now. We have a special guest tonight. His name is Stephen Harlow. He's going to be calling in shortly, in the next 10 minutes. And we're going to basically go down and interview memory lane with him and how he got started, what he's writing now, et cetera, et cetera. And we got, like I said, my show tonight, it's a Bayou Gumbo. So anything and everything goes. We're gonna cover everything. Tonight we're going to be doing some rock. But I'd like to get into some reggae artists. If you guys are out there, give me a shout. The station to call in, by the way, is 504-303-8922. And if you want to call in, for those of you who are listening, or watching me rather, on Up.Live, the number to call is 712-432-7883. And you could actually listen to this broadcast on your phones as well. And if you wanted to go to Radio Gombo Creole, I think it's .com or .net, one of the two, you can actually stream this broadcast as well on your laptops. So we're going to play some more music real quick, and we're going to come back, hopefully in the next couple of minutes, and we're going to have Stephen Harlow calling in very shortly. Thank you, guys.
See you dancing up there. Well, you can make them stop and stare. Yes, you know I love you. You know I need you. I wanna show you. I wanna please you now, baby. There's nothing more to say, but come
request
Sure. What you got?
Pato Bantan. I do not sniff the coke. I only smoke Sensimilia.
I like that. Let me find it real quick. Give me 1 second.
It's Maddie, mother. It's Maddie.
I know it's Maddie. I figured that. What's the name of it again?
I do not sniff the coke. I only smoke Sensimilia.
I do not.
Pato Bantan. Paton Baton. Bantan.
Pato Ban artist. Okay, I see him. Let me see if I can find a song.
Or you can do Barrington Levy. Too experienced.
Oh, I got it right here.
One.
By request. Here you go, guys.
All right, bro.
Thank you,
Cheers.
bud.
Now this one is dedicated to the people all over. Remember the words of the crucial entertainer. When I say I do not sip the coke, I only smoke the Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. Without a doubt I am the boss, and in my class I am the teacher. If music is a fruit of life, then I will be a reaper. If MC business was a school, then I would be headmaster. If a car, I'd be the driver. For bike, I'd be the rider. If MC business was a church, Pato would be the vicar. And instead of calling me MC, you all would call me preacher. But fun and joke aside, I want to get serious in this matter and dedicate this style to each and every cocaine dealer. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. Nah, I go sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. In February 1985, Pato became a winner because I did that tune called Hello Tosh. In February 1985, Pato became a winner because I did that tune called Hello Tosh. It shooted up the charts and nearly gave my mama failure. She looked at me and said, "Son, me glad me grow you proper. I sound like you with big pride and joy of any mother. Don't make a finger to your head, just think about your future." Don't just have encouragement, just made me push on further to break down any walls and also break through any barrier. I got a lot of guidance from GT, who is my manager. Assistance from Don Christie Fashion helped me cross the border. I also got a lot of aid from good Sensimilla. That's why I do not snort the coke, I only burn the ganja. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. Sensimilla. Pass the coach in the box. Sensimilla. Sensimilla. One day I had to catch a train from Birmingham to London. Halfway on my journey was approached by this white ruffian with greasy hair and scruffy jeans. He looked just like a villain. He sat down opposite me with a tenance in his right hand. But I don't judge appearance, I just check the way you go along. So I introduced myself to him as Mr. Pato Banton. Nice to meet you, my name's Rowdy and I work with PI Hire. I've heard your name someplace before, but I just can't remember. But anyway, I'm very, very, very glad to meet ya. And I've got some dope, it's first class code, kicking up this for a fiver. I looked down on the table and saw a piece of silver paper. Inside the silver paper was some coke that looked like flour. Me asked him, what it do for you? It give you strength and power. Now everyone I wanted to hear the way that Rowdy answered. When Mr. Papa abandoned the sensation is fine. It makes me see green men and I go to cloud 9. All my worries and problems are left miles behind. So no matter where I am, I have a brilliant time. If you don't believe me, I'll done and I'll fix you a line. Just take one sniff of this and you'll be out of your mind. But I took the coke and threw it right outside the carriage window. Before he could say a word, I quickly built up a 5-sheeter into my pocket for my Sensi and my lighter. I lit it with a flash and then to Rowdy passed it over. I could see that he was loving it because of his expression. Me tell him, this is Sensi, the healing of the nation. In some place doctors use it for herbal medication. Ronald Reagan smoked it just before him got on television. After Margaret Thatcher visit him, she brings him back to England, then distributes it equally throughout the House of Commons. But fun and joke aside, it gives me deep, deep meditation. It fills my heart with niceness and I get enough inspiration. You could be any color, any creed or any nation. After smoking Sensimilla, I know you'll find a reason why I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. No, I go sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. I do not sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla. No, I go sip the coke, I only smoke Sensimilla.
All right, that was a great song. Thank you, Maddie. Calling in from Hawaii. Aloha to you, bud. Next song we got up is Too Experienced by Barrington Levy. Or Levy, however you pronounce it.
Live in concert as you've never seen him before. Weird Al Yankovic. The Strings Attached Tour. June 13th at Sanger Theater. An evening of hits and classics from the king of musical comedy and his band. Backed by a full symphony orchestra. Reserved seats are on sale now at Ticketmaster.
Hello, this is Joe Boonie. How you doing today?
Joe, how's it going, man?
Hey, how you doing, bud?
Not bad, buddy.
Good. Is this the one and only Stephen Harlow that can never be carbon copied, duplicated, or replicated?
That's right.
Nice. Thank you so much for calling in, bud. I appreciate it. So I was doing
Ain't
some
no
digging,
problem.
doing some research, and come to find out you have a band called Rushing Dragon. Is a rock band. Is that correct?
That's right.
That is awesome. And tell me a little bit how the band became, how you guys started, where y'all met, etc. I'd love to hear that.
Oh, yeah, we met, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. We were going to the same church and ran into each other. The drummer, Jeremiah Gould, he found out that I played outside of church, secular music. And we figured out we had a lot of the same interests and influences, like classic rock music,
Nice
stuff to that nature, blues, and really he was in another band at the time called 11,
Okay.
and they ended up bringing me into that, and I sang for them for about a year and a half, and then the other guy that was with us ended up going to college.
Mm-hmm.
And when he went to college, that band kind of, I wouldn't really say fell apart, just kind of like everybody went their separate ways.
Right.
And he and I stayed together, and then we were like, well, let's call it something else. And it was just me and him. I'm a guitarist, he's a drummer. So he said, how are we going to do this? And I said, well, he said, 21 Pilots kind of have kind of remade what's acceptable in the music industry.
Right.
It's now okay to do like backing tracks with them. I said, I'll just record bass backing tracks. I said, and it ought to work pretty good. I said, we'll do that. I said, we'll put click tracks. I said, now when we play it back, I said, you and I will be the only ones who will be able to hear the click tracks. The audience will just hear the bass tracks and us.
Right.
I said, but the click tracks will help keep us on time. And he said, well, that ought to be good. I said, yeah. I said, because you want to go fast all the time, and I want to go slow. One of us is always rushing. One of us is always dragging.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And then that's how the name came on.
That's pretty cool.
Or came about.
That's awesome, man. If he's a drummer just like you're a guitarist, I'm sure y'all are one heck of a band. I mean, that's because I've watched your stream a couple of times on Up.Live, and I'll tell you what, those things that you do with the little strings and your little fingers going about like 39 miles per hour, well, not really 39, it's more like 99 miles per hour. It's unbelievable. And I understand. I mean, you can play a variation of blues. You can play some rock, and also a couple of heavy metal songs. It's pretty talented,
Oh, yeah.
pretty nice. So do you have any history in your family that anybody else that's a musician? Do you come from a musician gene pool?
I mean, not everybody, but I mean, my mother sang. That's how I got into singing.
Okay.
Really, whenever I was 3, 4 years old, I really started getting into singing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was probably 4 is whenever I got into it real big. They brought home we have a local festival here called the Strawberry Festival.
Oh, cool.
They're in town, and they brought home a little cassette, the old tape cassettes from a cover band that was down here.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's actually called Rick K and the All Nighters. If you ever get a chance to look them up, they're they're a pretty big name. I mean, they're a show band. They just play cover tunes, but they're a pretty big name now.
Okay. Can you repeat?
Went to Las Vegas. Had a thing there at one point.
Mm-hmm.
There a few years back. But yeah, that's how I really got into. That's how I figured out I wanted to sing.
That's cool. Can you back up a little bit and just repeat the thing you told us to look up? And for the listening audience out there, and for my benefit as well, because I'm actually taking some notes.
Yeah, it's Rick K and the All Nighters.
Rick K and the All Nighters. That sounds like a fun band.
Yeah, they're actually really good. Whenever I first started listening to them, they sang a lot of older stuff, you know, like 50s, 60s, that type of stuff. And now they do a variety. They do anything from, you know, like from the 50s all the way to today's music.
Right.
They've really like expanded since they've grown. And the drummer is Steve Moore. He's actually from Buchanan, and he's been on all countless interviews, and he's been on. They've had him like at big drumming events. He and Mike Portnoy kind of know each other and everything. I think they're pretty close.
Okay.
Like he's a pretty big name now. Of course, you'd never know it because he's kind of under the radar in some aspect.
Right.
But yeah, you know, they brought home that cassette tape, and I sit there and listen to that all about 2 times through, and just sang the words to every song. And then the next day they had like a birthday party for me, and I played that cassette and sang on the porch. And that's how I figured out I wanted to sing. I didn't really get into playing guitar and everything until I was 6 or 7.
Oh, wow.
And then I wouldn't say that I had attention deficit, because I don't think that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I just I couldn't commit to things that I didn't want to pay attention to. If I did, you know what I mean? If I really wanted to pay attention to something, then I did.
Right.
You know, I could really commit to something if I wanted to. And I want to say whenever I was 8 or 9 years old, I learned my first 2 chords on the guitar. Oh. And I played those 2 chords forever. And really, whenever I was 14, you see, my grandfather played guitar a little bit. Mm-hmm. My great-grandfather, I think, played guitar and banjo a little bit. But when I was 14, we had all these guitars. We had like 3 different guitars, and I was sitting around the house by myself, nobody around here. And at the time, we didn't have Dish Network. We just kind of moved out here where we are now.
Right.
So we didn't have cable. We didn't have nothing, and all you could do is like watch video cassettes, you know, VHS. Mm-hmm. Because that's all we had, that DVDs. And, you know, I pretty well watched everything that I could, and I was just, like, sitting around bored. And this old, we'd got these guitars through the shopping channel, old guy named Esteban. And he had, like, a whole collection of guitars. I don't know if he's even around anymore, but he had, like, a whole collection of guitars that he'd sold on there, and we had like the first 3, and I had this old Cutaway, and I was sitting there playing the same two chords, and I was like, this is getting boring. Right. Because I've been, like I said, you know, I'd been playing these same 2 chords just back and forth since I was 9. Right. And I found the old a music book of his, and I opened that thing up and found a song called House of Rising Sun, and I looked up, I never realized it before, but like right underneath the song title, right above the lyrics, was the chords of the song, and there were little dots on the strings, and I figured out pretty quick, like just looking at it, I was like, no, wait a second, these little dots is where I need to put my fingers. Nice. And then that's where I learned all those chords in that song, learned that song. And then got online after that, learned some other songs that I'd listened to and whatnot. Same thing. I don't know if I don't think that site's around anymore, but the site was called Chordy.com. It was one of the first tab sites around.
Right.
That and eChords. And people swore by Ultimate Guitar, you know, ever since I've gotten into playing guitar. And Ultimate Guitar, in my opinion, didn't used to be as good as it is now.
Nice.
Because anyone can really get on Ultimate Guitar and put a tab down. And the reason I like it so much now is pretty well any song you want, you can go find it on Ultimate Guitar. And I've played for, you know, since I was 14. I've played lead since I was 18, 19 years old. So I can just listen to a song now and play a couple of notes and be like, okay, they're out of this key.
Right.
And then I can get on Ultimate Guitar, and if it's in a different key, then I can, you know, I got a membership with it and everything. I can just transpose and get to the right key. So really that's kind of a rundown of how I got into playing and everything.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounded like just kind of putting the timeline together early in my head and on paper. I'm just kind of like I'm taking notes. So you basically picked up the guitar about the age of 6 and 7. By the age of 14, you were already playing lead and singing and everything. So that's amazing. You basically taught yourself. You're a self-taught musician, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now when I went to learn to play lead, there was my old mentor, the guy that I used to play music with, Chris Alderman. He is I think he works for the union now, you know, or that's what he was doing last I had track of him. He was working for the union for a pipe yard, running heavy equipment. So I mean, making the big bucks, keeping busy, but making big bucks. And I think he still plays a little bit every once in a while, just not as much as he used to.
Right.
But when I first started playing music with him, man, he was it's just something else, really. He always explained it as he didn't think that he was playing. He thought he was being possessed, which was just the only. I mean, he didn't really think he was getting possessed. That was just the only way he could explain it. Yeah. Basically, what he meant was he played by pure emotion. He didn't. He didn't sit down and like if I played a song, because I'd written all these songs, and that's another interesting fact I'll get to here in a second with him. Okay. If I played a song, whether it was a cover song or something that I'd written, he would play something to it, and then he was a solo guitarist. Like he liked the solo because he was from the blues. Like his origin was in blues music, and so I would always give him time to jam in any song that I did, whether it had a solo in it or not. If it didn't have a solo, it just ended up getting a solo in it. Now you can saying that you can probably like put 2 and 2 together and be like, okay, now this is you know, that's where I get it from. Even, you know, you've seen me on there play like these pop songs like Shawn Mendes and stuff like that. Like those songs don't have guitar solos to them, but I'm so into blues music that if I can hear a solo in a song, then I'm going to go ahead and throw one in there anyway. And it helps kind of keep it authentic, in the sense of, yeah, I'm playing a cover song, but at the same time I can kind of take it and make it mine, if nothing else, by putting like a solo to it. Even if it's just like a simple solo. But so he really kind of threw me through a loop. Now he wasn't too sure about us, you know, us kids whenever we first started playing music with him, because I was 18 and the drummer that was with us at the time was 19. Our bass player was only 17, so he was kind of like, you know, he'd played music with a bunch of different people. Had the opportunity to make it big a few different times. Some circumstances kept him from doing it. But so when we come around, it was kind of like he kind of figured we just wanted to play a couple songs on the weekend, you know, stuff like that, just kind of mess around.
Right.
And then he set us all down one time and just kind of asked us, he said, you know, what do you want to do with this? And we were like, what do we not want to do with it? We want to go all the way with it. He was like, well, then we're going to need to write our own songs. And then I was like, we've always been told that if you want to make it big, you got to play other people's songs because nobody knows your songs.
Right.
And he's like, well, Leonard Skinner didn't make it big playing the Allman Brothers.
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, you know, that makes sense. And so that really started like hardcore writing at that time. And
About how age were you again on when you started writing your own songs?
18.
18, okay.
Now I started writing, I think the first few songs that I wrote, I was 15, 16 years old.
Okay.
And then I was playing music with the drummer that was with us, at least at the beginning whenever I got with Chris. And in fact, that's how I met Chris. I met him through that drummer. I wasn't even going to play up there. The drummer had been invited by Chris to come up and jam. I wasn't in school anymore, so I helped him take his drums up there and set them up and everything. And then Chris was like, you know, if you know anybody who sings, you know anybody who plays guitar, talking to my drummer, John, he was like, if you know anybody that sings, you know anybody who plays guitar, let me know, you know. I don't really have a lineup anymore. And John was like, points over at me, and he's like, well, he can sing and he can play a little guitar.
Right.
And Chris was like, well, you guys come with me, we'll go get my stuff, and we'll go pick his stuff up, and we'll come back up here and we'll jam a little bit. And then, of course, that day all we did was play cover songs because we were under, like I said, we were under the impression that if you wanted to make it big, you had to play cover songs. So we figured that's all he'd want to hear. But yeah, he really pushed me to write my own stuff, and I started doing that. Now, not too long after, the drummer kind of quit, got fired, just whatever you want to say. Pretty well, it come down to we drew an ultimatum for the drummer that we had some rules that he needed to follow as far as like punctuation and stuff of that nature, scheduling. And he just kind of, you know, not interested after that. So he stepped down. We didn't get a drummer right away. It was me and John's little brother, Joe, still in there. So it was me, Joe played bass, Chris played guitar, and we were staying up there with Chris a good bit, and going out to this restaurant that his dad owned that's actually not too far away from where I live, and playing out there every once in a while, stuff like that. You know, just kind of, he was kind of trying to break us in, but break us in easy.
Right. In a venue y'all are comfortable with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we go out there and play just about any time we wanted to. He was trying to get everything, like the music tight before we went out there. Now, somewhere along the lines, Joe struggled with self-esteem issues at the time. I don't think he really struggles with them anymore. I haven't really seen him it's been about a year.
Yeah, he may have outgrown those things too.
Oh yeah, but yeah, he you know, he kind of struggled with self-esteem issues at the time, and people were basically, he was in a household where he was still living with his brother was still living with him, and John wasn't happy with Joe being up there playing music when John wasn't playing music up there, and the rest of the family didn't know anything about Chris.
Right.
and they could only go by what John was telling them, and would just, I mean, like, without getting into too much detail, John wasn't telling them anything good.
Okay.
So they were really getting on to him, and then they would go to him and say stuff like, well, you're not even a good bass player. You're not even a good bass player yet. You know, you've got bass players don't just play eighth notes and quarter notes, which nowadays they do. You know, if you turn on the radio, like new music, they don't play bass runs and stuff hardly anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, this was 2010, 2011, somewhere in there.
Right.
So it's just, I mean, like, rock and roll wasn't necessarily completely gone at the time anyway. You still had, like My Chemical Romance, bands like that.
Right.
Were still around. And so he wanted to be a rock bassist. So Chris sat down with him and showed him the pentatonic scale.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't too long after I watched him showing him the pentatonic scale, I figured out pretty quickly in a matter of seconds that that's the scale that Chris used to play lead.
Gotcha.
And I said, can you show me that?
Very
and he showed me, like, the basic pattern.
Right.
And from there I kind of, you know, I just ran down that pattern. I'd watched him, like, the techniques and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the techniques, like vibrato, came naturally. It was just something that I don't even know how to explain how it came about. He showed me how to bend a string, and then I bent the string and kept bending it up and down, and I was like, this sounds really cool. What is this? And he's like, that's vibrato.
Right.
And showed me how to, you know, hammer on pull off, stuff of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this one positioning, that's really cool, but what do I do after that?
Right.
He's
exactly.
like, what do you mean? And I was like, what do I do after I get past that position? That's like, are there more patterns, or are there more positions?
Right.
He's like, man, you got to figure that stuff out on your own. That's half the fun of it. Because that's how he learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how his teachers taught him. And, you know, basically the rest is history. You know, I started learning more and more. Downloaded, there's a couple apps, like
mm-hmm.
phone apps that I use.
Right.
Not as much as I used to, but when I was 20, 21 years old, and really, like, decided, you know, I'm going to play lead now.
Mm-hmm.
I downloaded a app called the Guitarist Reference.
Yeah.
And learn the major scales,
Mm-hmm.
or pretty well like the major scale. Basically, you have with scales, you have a scale, and then you have modes. And modes are basically just different patterns and different positions on the fretboard, or a guitar neck, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But modes are parts of that scale. Like, people, my whole life, and still to this day, I'll hear people misspeak, and it's mainly because unless you take, like, guitar theory or know a little bit about guitar theory, you may not know that, you know, people will come to me still to this day and be like, oh, we saw you up there, you were playing the Aeolian scale.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not a scale, that's a mode. It's a part of the major scale, but it's a mode, it's not a scale, but it's a pattern within the major scale.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like, I'm not going to sit there and you know, be technical with them and say stuff like that, or, you know, but really, you know, there's this distinguishing between modes and scales kind of gets lost if you don't know a whole lot about guitar theory. I wasn't much into guitar theory whenever I first learned,
Mm-hmm.
because I had the same fear that that Chris had. I was afraid that, you know, if I learn a bunch of scales and stuff, I'm going to become so technical, and then the next thing you know, I'm going to be one-dimensional. Everything that I play is going to sound the same.
Right.
Because I'm just going to be so technically taught that, you know, the emotion's going to be sucked right out of it. And then I learned all these scale patterns and everything, and I was like, you know, this didn't really change anything. It just showed me more of what it's more like a map than anything else. You know, it shows you what you can do.
Right. That's awesome, man. I'm astonished and both proud of you. I mean, it's, you know, it's amazing how you basically taught yourself, and from you know, to the level of a when I see you play, you're a true musician. I mean, you could close your eyes and know exactly what your fingers and hands are supposed to be, and you just grow with it. It's just amazing to watch you play. And
oh yeah, that comes
I,
from like years and years of practice.
Yeah, and I can tell you really truly enjoy picking up that guitar and just going to town on it. You wail it. I mean, it's just amazing.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
And then the fact, you know, like through Up.Live and everything, that was like, you know, I got into Up.Live through some people that I was a fan of. Actually, were streaming on there. The kids from the band of Summer High were streaming on there, and I was like, what is Up.Live? And they were like, they put it in their Instagram story because they were hosts at the time.
Right.
And they said, you know, download the app. We're streaming on there, and I'm like, I didn't know what they were doing exactly as far as streaming. I'm like,
it's like a new thing, right?
you know, I've seen video streaming before. You know, I've never really dabbled in that or been a part of that, or even so much as watched people on video streaming. I was like, you know, I'll get into it. I'll see what it's all about.
Right.
And
for the benefit,
I saw them doing it, and then probably about a month after watching them do it, I started doing it. Of course, you know, I wasn't a host at the time, but I was, you know, anyone could get on there and broadcast. And you know, pretty well the rest is history. You know, even before I became a host, you know, it didn't take but a month or two, and I was getting like 500, 600, you know, 1,000, over 1,000 people in there. And then, you know, I would say 2 months of doing that, I ran into Sweets, and then the rest is history there, you know, and that's pretty well like a big blessing to me, though, is Up.Live, because it gives me the chance to entertain. It's one thing to play music, just messing around or play music at church, you know, stuff like that. And that's all good, don't get me wrong. But it's a completely different thing to be able to entertain people. And the cool thing about Up.Live is I know people that are going out to these venues today that are doing like world tours, you know, and, you know, I'm basically doing that every time I broadcast, because I'm getting, you know, potentially anywhere from 800 to 1,500 people in there, sometimes over 2,000.
Right.
And these aren't people from one specific area. These are people from all around the world.
Right, and this is just like the radio station too. Yeah, this is an internet radio station, and you're reaching just like the app. You're reaching all over the world right now as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a great thing, and for the benefit of the listening audiences, you know, apps like Up.Live and stuff like that that actually allow people to broadcast on them and stream from them. It's a whole new twist of social media. You know, I've been in the old school where we had message boards, and we were like keyboard warriors. You know, banging away at the keyboards on our own points and everything like that, and driving our own ideas and thoughts to one another, and to the point of, you know, message boarding to Twitter and Facebook and other media to to basically live streams. I mean, live streams is where everything is right now. It's just an amazing thing. It really is.
Yeah, and it really seems like within probably like the past, from the research that I've done, it seems kind of like the past 4 to 5 years, live streaming's really been like making its break, if
Right.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got like so there's several different live streaming apps. I can't go through all of them, but there's several different ones.
Right.
And I didn't even know about any of that stuff until I got into Up.Live and everything and learned about it. Because I was just kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say living in the dark, but for lack of a better term, that's about all I can say is living in the dark.
Yeah, so it's like just like once you can become familiar with and acquainted with live streaming, it's like, whoa, where I've been all these years? I'm like in the Stone Ages or something,
Oh yeah, and where I excuse me, where I live at, we kind of end up happening upon things years after they start actually happening.
Right.
Like or after they've already been a thing. As funny as that seems, because our radio stations here, honestly, before I started subscribing to Sirius XM radio, there were a lot of bands that I like now, but I had no clue were bands.
Right. Yeah.
And Twitter and stuff to that nature, Twitter really helps me out with the up and coming bands and stuff to that nature.
Right.
Like there were just some examples, like 21 Pilots. I had no clue who 21 Pilots was until 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And they had already pretty well kind of made a name for themselves at that point.
Right.
5 Seconds of Summer, I had no clue who they were until 2014. And now it's Palais Royale, they've been around since 2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
Right.
And, I never even had a clue these guys were around until, and that's nothing against them or anything. It's just like the area that I live in, we're very sheltered. Our radio stations, they play what they want to play.
Right.
Anywhere else you can go, or a lot of places that I went before, like the rock radio stations play everything. They play anything from 1950 to today's music. Our classic rock stations have played the same thing for the past 3 months.
Yeah, believe it or not, a couple of
That's
years ago.
just how they do it.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, Metallica was like on classic rock. I'm like, holy moly, I'm getting old.
See, and they're still putting out records. Yeah, because I'm listening to their stuff on Octane, on Sirius XM Octane.
Right.
But yeah, they're
like their old stuff, their old albums.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, and you can't really their new stuff is great, don't get me wrong, especially with Rob in there playing bass. That old stuff really there was a chemistry there that really can't be beat.
Right.
Between between Kirk and Lars and James and Cliff. There was like that lineup had something that it would have been interesting to see where they'd be today had Cliff not passed away in the wreck.
Right. So,
that's just like like Randy Rhoads, one of my biggest influences as far as like guitar and everything. It would be interesting to see where he would be at today had he not died in a plane crash.
Right.
Because he was big into classic guitar. That's what unless you do like research, he was learning classical guitar, and Ozzy just kind of like, or I think it was Randy's manager or something to that nature, or mutual friend or something, brought Randy in and was like, listen to this guy, and they said Randy didn't even like play what he was going to play. He just warmed up, and Ozzy was like, he was like in the warm-up process, and Ozzy was like, I want this guy, and they said Randy was a little, not really insulted, but he just couldn't believe it. He was just like, but you didn't even hear me play what I was going to play, and Ozzy's like, that's fine, I want you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just how good of a guitarist he was.
Right. That's pretty cool.
But yeah, and then like Gary Moore, I saw because I'm big into Gary Moore. Like, he was a blues rock guitarist actually, but
mm-hmm.
he played the style that is very similar to the style that I played. So, you know, it's just like really smooth, very technique-filled music.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, he would just start shredding like a heavy metal guitarist, and then he would slow back down, and I call that explosive blues.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what he called it. I would say he just kind of called it, you know, blues and rock, but I call that explosive blues because that's technically what I'm doing. Is like I'm playing all this really technical stuff. I wouldn't call it complicated, but like technical stuff.
Right.
And it's just kind of slow and smooth,
mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden it's just like a building of emotion, and then it's just like pow, explosion, and then like I'll start shredding real fast. It's just basically like me not being able to contain it, and then I'll slow back down. So that's where I come up with that that title of explosive blues.
That's cool. Have you ever played any Johnny Cash music?
Oh, dude, that's what I started playing.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah, whenever I started playing, I was big into classic country music.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't mind classic country music. I just listened to so much of it from the time I was 14 years old to the time I was 18, 20,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in there, to where I just kind of burnt myself out on it.
Right.
And I'm with if I ever go anywhere with my brother, that's what, you know, he's the older brother, so he's in control of the radio.
Right.
So, you know, basically that's what we listen to is classic country.
Mm-hmm.
To us, to just about everyone that I ever hang out with or play music with, too, for that matter, country music, I'm not saying country music isn't country music anymore, because obviously it is. It's just evolved to a point to where it's almost more rock than anything else anymore. That's like some of the people that I hang around with call it bro country. I don't know if that's an insult or what that is. I don't really.
You said
I don't get it. I don't get into insulting music genres or anything like that, or calling it something that's not. You know, country music is country music, but it's. You know, to me, if it's not early 2000s and back,
mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to sit down and listen to it and say, oh, you know, okay, this is country music.
Right.
Because I was listening to I think it was Chris Stapleton.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that he redid that old David Allan Coe song, Tennessee Whiskey.
Yes.
I think's the name of it.
Yes, yeah, that's an awesome song. I bowl to that song usually on a Wednesday night, so that song plays at least once at the bowling alley.
Oh yeah, and that song went off, or
it's a great song.
It came on, rather. I say it went off because that's the only way I can describe like a song that I really really like. It went off.
Yeah.
But no, it came on in a comic book store I was in. Up at the mall that's like, you know, 30-some miles from here that we were at, and I was like, who is this? Because it was Chris Stapleton, but it didn't sound like it didn't sound like country music. And I was like, who is this? And my friend, you know, my drummer was with me, you know, Jeremiah Gould, the guy that drums for me now, and he was like, well, why? And I was like, this is awesome, it's blues. And he was like, no, Bob, it's country, this is Chris Stapleton. I was like, they can call it whatever they want, but this is blues.
Right.
It's like, that's just what it is. And then there's so yeah, I mean that was the first time I'd ever heard him, Chris Stapleton. I was like, this guy is just absolutely awesome. Of course, I've listened to. So I used to work for like a supermarket like Walmart, and worked for a vendor company before I got out of that, type of work that was third party through Walmart that sold cell phones. And that's actually what I did before I started streaming.
Okay.
And they played a lot of today's country music. And there is still country music that sounds like the older stuff. It's not as...
Yeah, it seems like the newer country music is...
It's almost like it's not as pushed as much as the more popish.
Yeah, it's like pop, bubblegum, and a little rockish. They kind of bring rock into country, and I guess that's to appease all the millennials and kids coming up these days.
Oh yeah, we're ruining everything. No, I'm joking.
No, y'all actually, look, had it not been for millennials, the world would never have the technology that everybody uses these days. I mean, you guys are tech savvy.
Dude, yeah, and then
it's so awesome.
The cool thing about it is, it's like you have bands like Palais Royale. That is just my absolute favorite band in the world. Like I could run into those guys that I just like. I don't think they even know who I am, but like, just for example's sake, to explain how much I actually like this band, I could run into these guys and they could absolutely look at me and just be like, we don't like you,
right?
And I would shrug and not shed a tear and be like, I don't care, I still love you guys. That's how much I love that band. And the big thing about it is the fact that they play, the music that they play sounds like classic rock. Like it's got today's topics, but just like the instrumental wise, music wise, it's classic rock.
Right.
And those guys just absolutely have something that, I don't know if you ever watched that movie American Satan. I have not. It doesn't seem like
the title doesn't appeal to me.
It doesn't seem like a bad movie. Right. Looking it up, because if I'm not sure about a movie, I'll look it up. And it really doesn't seem like a bad movie. I mean, like after watching, because I go to church and everything, so of course whenever it came out, everybody was, Mom, I can't believe they'd make a movie like this. And, people
right.
talk about things that they want to take other people's words for instead of looking it up for themselves. And looking it up and everything, I was just like, this isn't any different than, I think it was John Denver did a movie one time where I think he was a rock star or something on there, and like the God was an old man in like a fishing outfit, and the devil was on there. I mean, it's basically kind of the same aspect, a lot different than that, but it's really cool to read about anyway. I've not watched it still to this day. Not saying I never will, I just never can find it on.
Right.
And but it has Andy Biersack from Black Veil Brides, and Remington Lake, the lead singer for Palais Royale, was the singing voice for Andy's character. And they played somebody put on Instagram, this is how I found out about this. This is where I'm at, figuring out, goes back to I figure out things, years after it came out, or years after, figure out about bands years after they've established themselves. Somebody put a post and said, I really like the song Nights in White Satin. and it was a younger girl, you know, like younger than me.
Right.
And I was like, Nights and White Sat. I know that song, don't I? I'm like, surely to God somebody didn't steal that name.
Right.
And, you know, write a song that was named Nights and White Satin that isn't the Moody Blues song.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get on there and I'm like, commented on the post, I was like, by the Moody Blues? And she was like, no, by the Relentless. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think I got on there and was like, before I even listened to it, I was like, I'd say that's pretty good. Moody Blues did it first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think can't remember, I think she said, she commented back, I've only heard the Relentless version. And I was like, who in God's name is the Relentless? And I get on, because I didn't know anything about the movie or anything to that nature.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew whenever it first came out, you know, there were a lot of people that talked against it. There were a lot of people that talked for it. So I never did draw an opinion on it because I never saw it. I just kind of forgot about it.
Right.
Because I was just kind of like, you know, unless I catch it on pay-per-view or not really pay-per-view, but like the movie channel like HBO or something like that, I'm probably not going to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, just because I was so into music whenever that movie came out, that I was just like, I don't have time to watch movies.
Right.
Still to this day, I hardly ever watch TV anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always playing music.
That's good.
Or doing something with social media.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so anyway, I looked it up, you know, the Relentless Nights and White Satin, and I noticed just as soon as the guy started singing, I'm like, no, by God, that sounds like Remington Leif.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up, and yeah, he was the voice for Andy's character. Which Andy's character was the lead singer of the Relentless on that movie, and I was like, man, that's crazy. It's like he was hitting notes and stuff in that song, and then that I didn't know the kid could hit. And I don't know, it gave me a completely new respect for the guy, because I was just like, man, this guy can do anything, can he?
Yeah.
And then he sang that, and then I think another one that I'm not sure if it was in the movie or not, but another one that was on like the soundtrack anyway was the Hey my rock and roll will never die, that old Neil Young song.
Yeah.
He did that one too, and I was just like, and this guy just never seems to like fail to fascinate me, because like you go to their shows and this guy will find something to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever I saw him at the Warped Tour up at Burgettstown, I'm not sure which one's the exact. It's the first time I'd ever been to the place in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. They pronounced it both. The bands pronounced it both ways. Yeah. So I was just kind of like, I don't get to learn how to actually say this. But then most of the bands did what I did, would do. They just went out and said, hello, Pittsburgh. But yeah, whenever we saw him there, like, the closest thing for him to climb was, a good, too far up for him to get on. And I was just like, he usually hangs from the rafters and stuff like that. He's not going to do that here. They're too far up. First time I'd ever seen the band. Mm-hmm. And, live, I'd seen him on, like, YouTube and stuff like that. That's how I figured out that, like, he climbs stuff. And, like, I turned my attention for, like, 1 second, because there was a lot of activity at Warped Tour. Mm-hmm. And, or was, I should say, now that that's done. And I turned back around, and he's, like, hanging from the rafters, and I just kind of, like, looked over and was trying to ask my drummer when he jumped up on the rafters, and my drummer couldn't talk. He was laughing too hard, like, that's how enthusiastic or how entertained my drummer was about it. And that's saying something because the guy Jeremiah doesn't listen to anything if it's past like 1960.
Yeah.
I mean, like he'll listen to our stuff
Right.
that we play, but that's basically like all the modern music that he listens to is like stuff that I've shown him.
Right.
Like, and then he shows me a lot of stuff like from the 1950s, you know, stuff like that. Like, I used to listen to Buddy Holly and a lot of Elvis and stuff like that, but I, you know, as far as like the doo-wop groups and stuff of that nature, I didn't get into them as much.
Yeah.
And he's like big time into that stuff.
I mean, it's kind of a shame the doo-wop groups kind of faded out with history. You know, there's nobody kind of bringing it back. I mean, although I do see some new doo-wops. I can't remember the name of them for the life of me, but they're always entertaining to watch and listen to because they're just very different than what everybody's accustomed to these days.
Oh yeah, and then there's like, you know, there's bands that some more modern bands that do like doo-wop backups,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, doo-wop harmonies and stuff like that. And there's songs like Volbeat,
Right.
the heavy rock band,
Mm-hmm.
like especially in the song Black Rose, they do like kind of doo-wop-ish harmonies and stuff like that in the chorus.
Right.
That's one of the biggest reasons that Jeremiah likes them, because I like them just because they're heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and then they still kind of got, it's like they're heavy, but at the same time they kind of have that classic rock vibe too.
Right.
And or at least some of their stuff does. And then, you know, and then on the other hand, they've got stuff that's just like heavy.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, because anymore my music genre range is pretty wide.
Yeah.
On what I listen to.
I get a sense that you're like a musical encyclopedia, in some respect.
Oh yeah, I mean, like there's even some rap music stuff like that I'll listen to, and some of the rap music I just don't like, just because, I mean, like, and I'm not saying that the artists are bad or anything like that. I would never say that.
Right.
I can't get into stuff whenever it's a song dedicated to dissing other artists. It's just like, I come from a world where artists are supposed to help each other, not dog each other.
Right.
And, you know, they can do whatever they want. I'm not saying they should stop doing what they're doing or anything, or
Mm-hmm.
by God, they better turn and change their ways or anything like that. I'm just saying, you know, it's hard for me to get into because I'm not going to write a song dogging somebody else, even if it's just a joke.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't.
I think for the most part,
Me
they do that
personally, I wouldn't do that. So it's hard for
Right.
me to since I only like listen to and play music that I can believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can't believe what you're singing, if I don't think you're sincere, I'm not going to be able to, or I should say, or I don't think you're sincere.
Right.
If I can't connect to it, and I think that's anybody really. I mean, yeah, you've got your regular just like music lovers that just kind of like go out and see a live show just because it's a live show. They don't really care what genre it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's just about with anything in the entertainment business, you know.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are just like for this genre, and then you have people that are like, you know. So, but yeah, for me personally, it's like if I can't connect to it in some level, and it's going to be hard for me to listen to it. Now, have I listened to stuff like that before and been entertained by it?
Yes.
Obviously,
yeah.
kind of.
Speaking
It's
about
just one of those things where it's like if I'm in control of the radio,
right.
that's not the song I'm going after.
Right. So speaking about genres, What is your go-to genre for like me, like comfort food for me would be eating Mexican foods, right? So my comfort genre, if you will, would be heavy metal music, although I do have a wide range of variety I do listen to. But if things go wrong or if things go bad, I'm having a bad day, I'm going home and I'm going to crank out some heavy metal music to put myself back together. So what is your go-to genre for stuff like that?
Usually I will listen to basically hard rock, new hard rock, heavy metal, stuff like that.
Okay.
That is usually where I go to. Anywhere from Black Veil Brides to a little bit of Marilyn Manson, Asking Alexandria, Fever 333.
Okay.
Stuff to that nature.
Right.
Really, that's where I go to. I listen to a lot of Palais Royale. I believe they would be considered Christian rock, I think is what they consider themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more kind of like I said, there's stuff more kind of like classic rock.
Right.
But and that group is just a complete set of super musicians, including Remington. He's just like super voice, and he's got like a really raw, gravelly type voice.
Mm-hmm.
But the kid can sing anything, and I call him the kid, and he's 24. He's not that much younger than me, 2 years. But the guy can sing just about anything you want him to sing.
Right.
And then you have the oldest brother who plays the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing that I like about Sebastian is the fact that he's left-handed and he plays a left-handed guitar. There are so many people that are left-handed in the music business that play a right-handed guitar.
Right.
Because that's just what they learned on.
Yeah, exactly.
But Sebastian's left-handed, he plays left-handed.
Right.
He plays Gretsch, which is
that's amazing.
not necessarily rare, but it's pretty amazing, especially the looks of those guitars.
Right.
It's hard to beat a Gretsch, especially if it's got a Bigsby in it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's got because the Bigsby tremolo system is just something else. I've got a Schecter with a Floyd Rose, which I love to death. But if you sit down with me and ask me, what do you like? It's like if somehow you could make that Schecter with a Bigsby, tremolo on it, I would rather that. Right. But I'll go with the Floyd Rose for now.
Yeah. So let me ask you this thing.
It's just an amazing band. The youngest brother plays the drums. He plays like, what is that drummer's name? Played for, is it Mitch Mitchell or something like that? Played drums for Jimi Hendrix. And
I can Google it real quick if you like. I can't remember.
Then the bass player Daniel, just absolutely. If you ever seen Buckethead play guitar,
Mitch Mitchell.
I think was it Mitch Mitchell?
Yep.
Okay. But the bass player Daniel Curcia, I think's his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Just if you've ever seen Buckethead play guitar, whenever Buckethead plays like the slap bass on the guitar,
yeah. That's my favorite style of bass anyway.
But he just goes absolutely crazy, where it's just like, kind of like
Seinfeld.
like Daniel can do stuff like that. Now,
right.
he plays in these songs, what fits the song. But I saw a video of him on Instagram one time playing slap bass, and he's just absolutely tearing it up. And I was just like, I just kind of the new favorite bass player.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the rhythm guitarist, you don't hear as much about him. His last name escapes me. It always does. I believe his first name's Waldo.
Waldo? Like where is Waldo?
Yeah. Yeah, literally. I'm pretty sure his first name is Waldo.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, now if you ever watch them live or any of their videos live, you'll hear like this blues, like this real killer blues lead every once in a while happening, and like about 8 times out of 10, that's Waldo. You know, that's the rhythm player back there playing, and I mean, those like Sebastian and that guy are like the two, probably my two favorite guitarists right now in the world.
Yeah, there's actually a band out in New Orleans. They actually split. They kind of went their separate ways. There was a band. It was a jazz band called Astral Project, and it was a couple of them. Can't remember the guy's name, but I know the drummer is Johnny Vodakovich. And maybe you drummers heard of him because the dude's a legend. He can go from playing a what you call it, a 2 to 4 beat drum to like 1/8, and he changes it up so much. It's like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
It's amazing. It's like doom doom, and he goes, and it's like, wow, like like where did that energy come from? And it's like his face is the same face whether he's playing slow or fast, and the more he drinks, the better he gets. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just
it's funny how that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's the dude's awesome, and I think he actually teaches drums now in somewhere in New Orleans.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. We got about maybe 9 more minutes or so because I want everybody to hear your music towards the end of the show. I'm gonna play you 6 songs that I have that you have hung on Spotify. Just to kind of wrap up a little bit. So, any other ambitions you have other than being a musician? Like, are you like, do you tinker, or are you studying like kind of real estate? Do you kind of like want to go in like different veins? You just kind of want to strictly stay on your musical talents and just take it to like going into like from 2018 to 19 and on. Like, what are your plans? What are you what's your aspirations? That sort of thing. I'm just curious because I'm just you're a young musician. Obviously you're driven to play music with or without anybody's help, without anybody's support of approval, because you just love it. So I think I might have answered my own question, but I'm gonna let you answer it because I'm kind of interested in see your response.
I mean, I do 9 to 5 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If I sit here and tell you all the jobs all the different type of 9 to 5s that I've had, we'll be here for another hour, so I'm not going to get into that.
Right.
It's just not me. I can't. I mean, I like it. I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
If it came down to it, it's just like, look, you're going to do something 9 to 5. I could do that. If I absolutely had to do it, I could do it.
Right.
It's not that bad. I mean, it's bad, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But no, not really. I mean, the music stuff's just going to keep growing and growing until it gets to the point. I've been in so many different lineups now. People always, especially younger artists now, I see like they'll put on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this real quick and then I'll go on. They'll put on social media, your parents aren't always right, and I'm just kind of always sitting back on, dude, none of my parents have always been right.
Mm-hmm.
They told me whenever I was 18 that they were like, we understand that you have friends and that your friends play music,
right,
but they're not as dedicated as you.
Exactly.
And I was just kind of like, how do you know? Y'all, you guys don't know anything. You're just my parents. You're just, I'm your baby boy. I'm the youngest son. I'm the youngest child. You're just trying to look out for me. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Emotions get in the way. But they always told me. They told me since I was 17, 18 years old, don't worry about if these guys will play music with you, they'll be there. If they won't, they won't. Just do your own thing. Go do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was always like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to play music with my friends. Now I'm 26 years old, and I'm looking back at my life, and I'm like, you know, I probably could have gotten somewhere by now if I would have just did something myself.
Right.
And not given these people so many different chances. Because it's one thing to walk like 2 or 3 miles with somebody, but whenever you start getting like 8 to 9 to 10 miles, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, I'm going to keep going with music. If I'm like 30 before I actually, you know, break out and start touring like real extensively or something like that, that's not that bad. That's still pretty young, actually.
Yeah, well, if you do tour, you're always welcomed in the city of New Orleans. I mean, we'd love to have you play down here, and many of our venues, we got a bunch of venues down here that the acoustics are great.
Oh yeah, I've been down to New Orleans a couple of times. I've never been into any of the venues, but I have been down there a couple of times. It's a really nice city.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, you know, I just feel like it's gonna keep growing.
Now, are you looking to like land into like a record company contract? Do you want to go to the independent route and basically produce your own content, your music, and put it out there yourself, and reap 100% of the benefits versus like what 5, 10, 15% of the benefits?
I mean, if a record company approached me, I would sit down with, you know, I'll give them a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them a chance, but it's just, I have approached record companies so many times, and a record company today, this is their basically a record company. Nothing against them. I understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Basically, their views on it these days are, if you're not established, we're not going to mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like trying to get a loan at a bank when you've never got a loan.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, your credit's okay. Your credit's not bad, but
there's not enough.
You've never gotten a loan before, so we're kind of leery about giving you a loan. It's like, if you don't give me a loan, I can't, you know.
Right.
Then I can't get future loans because we're going to run into this same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The music business is really starting to. I think it's starting to go in a better direction. You know, there for a long time, I think the music business was not really plagued, but I think for a long time the music business was all about if you're my friend,
mm-hmm.
I can get you there. Instead of if you're good, I can get you there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
right.
I think that's where these record companies are kind of. I think that's why they want you to be established, because they're kind of like, we want to see who's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because once you're in there, what they do and what they don't do is a whole different ball game than what people think. Like a lot of people think that every record deal's the same. You know, you get in there and they pay for everything and they do everything, and it's not the way it works.
No, it's really not.
Most of the time, it's like they sign you on with a promise,
mm-hmm.
and you're in there. Once you get in there, they're like, okay, and now you're your own booking agent, or you need to find a booking agent. Your manager. You know, we're not doing any of that stuff. You're signed to our roster. We'll help put your music out and stuff like that. But as far as like booking stuff of that nature,
right, it's
basically you got to go through a different entity.
Yeah,
and
mm-hmm.
Whenever I look at it in that aspect, you know, if I can wrap up, because I'm a man of 1,000 words, I can't just say something. Really, when it comes down to it, looking at it like that, knowing what I know, it's like I'm going to have to do it myself, whether I'm signed to a record company or not. Sometimes I'll just do it myself.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits to doing it yourself. There's a lot of headache to doing it yourself, but
yeah,
it's just like, look at like Jack White. I mean, he's done his whole career since the 90s.
mm-hmm.
He's done it all himself. And today he's one of the biggest. You don't hear as much about him as like maybe what you'd hear about Rihanna or someone like that, but
Right.
he's still one of the biggest rock musicians. You know,
Mm-hmm.
as far as the last thing I'll say is like as far as do I have any other hobbies or anything like that? You know, that'd be a completely different question because like I like to write.
Right.
I'm a big time writer because I'm an artist.
Mm-hmm. Right. You got a
And
creative side of your brain. That
one
you
of
use
the-
mostly.
One of the biggest things that I've loved in my whole life is a good story.
Right.
And so, you know, I like to write. I'll write books and stuff like that. I have a comic book. It's never been released or anything. It's still in the works
Right.
because I can't draw. So I have a artist on hold right now for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's one of the best artists that I've ever seen in my life. And as far as like I've seen his work before, just in the black and white stages, just in the penciled stages, it's looking pretty awesome. So
That's cool.
it's something else, and that's good that I could run into him because it was kind of like I can write a story, but I can't draw it. I can't illustrate it.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of that in my spare time. There's a couple of books there on Amazon, The Wolf and The Dungeons of Maitland, which I'm more proud of The Dungeons of Maitland than I am The Wolf.
Right.
The Wolf was kind of like it's a crime drama, but it was definitely a story that I wrote jumping out of my comfort range zone,
Mm-hmm.
and I more or less did it just to do it than to put a whole lot of. I mean, I put a lot of heart and soul in it. Don't get me wrong, but it was just kind of like, can I do this? And then whenever I did it, I was just kind of like, oh, that's not a bad story, so I released it.
Mm-hmm.
And with The Dungeons of Maitland, I think that was probably it's probably my favorite series to write on, just because it wasn't even supposed to be a book. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons by myself because all the people that I used to play with
Wow.
had families now and whatnot, and just don't have the time to do anything like that. So
Yeah.
I was playing the game by myself and writing down what I was doing, and then I was just like, this looks like a story. Why don't I just make it a story?
That's cool. Yeah, I thought Dungeons and Dragons kind of died with my generation. I didn't realize, it still lived.
Oh, dude, yeah. I think you'd be surprised at how many people actually still get into that stuff. Like when I was in school, I would have never dreamed to play stuff like that, just because, like, and it's sad, but it's really cool that today's culture is a lot more accepting.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that I really love about like the kids coming up today.
Yeah.
You still have some bullying here and there. I mean, you'll never completely get rid of it.
Unfortunately,
That's just the way it is. It's like no matter what laws we pass, and that's a whole nother ball game. It's
Yeah.
just like no matter what laws you pass for political correctness, people are always like, well, we gotta make it to where if you say something specific, then you can get fined. It doesn't matter. You can make it to where there's a $1 million fine. People are still going to say what they want to.
Yeah.
They don't know. The people who don't care, and the people who do care, do care.
Right.
But, I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. It's horrible that people go out and bully people just because of stuff they like and whatnot, because that's what I'm saying. Like, back in school,
Mm-hmm.
I would have never dreamed of playing Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. I'd been the laughing stock of the group,
Right.
unfortunately. But then, getting out of school and being like 18, 19 years old and running into these people that I played music with that were like, we're gonna go to our house and play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, what? You guys play that? And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, I kind of always wanted to play that.
That's
I'm
awesome.
an adult now. I don't care what people think of me, so I just
Yeah.
go out and do just about anything I want to.
Right. Yeah, that's
Um,
cool. I appreciate you taking a time to on a Friday night at a young age you are. I mean, you could be out out there playing a gig, writing another song, or just sitting playing Xbox or PlayStation or whatever you do. I mean, it's just thank you so much for being a part of the show. I really appreciate it. Look, I'd love to have you back in the future. If this is something that you want to do, is returning guests.
Oh yeah,
with
definitely,
a
man.
new release, you coming out with a new song. Hey, let me know. I'd love to have you on. Speaking of which, too, Christmas is right around the corner. Are you working on
definitely.
any? You working
I think
on any carols?
the only thing that I can think of that's coming out, there is and they're not the best recordings in the world. It's because they're old,
Right.
but it's the solo album, Stephen Harlow, the first generation, and it's literally like 7 or 8 of the songs that I wrote whenever I was first writing.
That's awesome.
So it's very jam rock.
Mm-hmm.
It's between jam rock and country rock because that's what I was writing at the time.
Right.
People used to always say our stuff sounded like the Allman Brothers at that time.
Right.
So that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Thanks again for being a part of the show. Just you're listening. Everybody listening out there, Radio Gumbo Creole in New Orleans. It's like an internet station. Boonie's Bayou Talk Show Gumbo, where I bring you, every genre that I can grab that's out there, independent or looking for, a record company. Stephen, I wish you the best of luck in the future. Very prosperous 2019, and just take the rest of the year and kind of. Yeah, because that's what I do during holidays. I kind of think about, hey, what didn't I accomplish this year? Should I take that off my plate and just kind of regroup and move forward in the next year? Because those things that we want to accomplish one day, they may be resurrected when the opportunity presents themselves. You never know.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just did get out of the hospital there earlier this week with that infection I was getting. See, first thing was my blood sugar was bottoming out on me, but that was my fault. And then I came down with some type of infection of some kind. They still don't have any clue what it was, but it's some type of viral infection. So I ended up getting spinal tapped with that. So I'm just kind of easing back into streaming and everything because I put a lot of emotion and feeling into like the vocals and everything. So it's like I get tension headaches from it anyway, but tension headaches on top of a spinal headache is a whole different ballgame.
Wow.
But I'm doing a lot better now, so it's
right.
I'm really hoping to push on and finish out the year strong. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
I appreciate you taking the time. Again, a busy Friday night. I'm gonna go ahead and play some of your music when you go, and then if anybody wants to visit you online, they most certainly can. They can go to Up.Live, I believe the website is. Download the app and follow you. Actually, I have your information, your user ID on my website, booniesbayou.com, BOONIES Bayou.com. You can get all your Stephen Harlow information out there, and I'm gonna update that with links to your songs as well after I head on out to the studio tonight. But thanks again, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, man. Have a good one.
You too, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, that was Stephen Harlow. Wonderful, wonderful, talented musician. We're going to listen to some of his songs and then close out the broadcast with his songs. Again, you're listening to Radio Gumbo Creole. The number at the station, if you want to call in, just to kind of say hey, is 504-303-8922. And we're going to play, first song up is Don't Leave Me.
Girl, I see you dancing up there. Well, you can make them stop and stare. Yes, you know I love you. You know I need you. I wanna show you. I wanna please you now, baby. There's nothing more to say.
All right, everybody, we got a couple more songs. You're listening to Radio Gunbo Creole. If you want to call a station, give me a call. There's a few minutes left, 504-303-8922, and you're listening to Stephen Harlow, the rock band musician we just had on the interview for the past hour. The archive hopefully will be up on my website, booniesbayou.com. Enjoy the rest of the show, guys.
Hey guys, who's ready?
I apologize about that. Spotify threw a curveball and threw me another commercial, so you got my voice again. My motto, by the way, is think big and stay positive. I tell myself that every day. So a lot of musicians out there, actually, if you stay for the duration of the entire interview, that's pretty much Stephen mottos as well. It was to think big and stay positive. Speaking about positive, wow, right on cue. The next song by Stephen Harlow is called Positive Thinking. Check this out.
When you've done all you can and taken all you can stand, and you want to give in or book a trip out of here,
everybody. This concludes the show. You've listened to my show, Boonie's Bayou, Talk Show Gumbo, on Radio Gumbo Creole. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you want any more juice, just go to my website, booniesbayou.com. Thank you guys again. God bless.
Baby, paguei l'argent. Acaba o diamante. Mais si moi